All right, go ahead.
Hi, welcome to the latest recap episode for Survivor Washington. I am currently busy and driving elsewhere, but I do have these other three people that are going to be doing the recap for you in my stead. We have resident superfan Heather Cannon, who is going to be on season 3 or 4, I'm assuming.
No.
I'm gonna make it happen.
Oh God.
We have
She will be.
we have assistant producer Jaden Osborne, and then
I don't
we
approve.
have.
Did you say
And then we
Shaylin?
have these.
He did.
That was honest mistake. And then lastly, but mostly at the same time, we have the seventh boot slash hottest person on the cast.
Oh,
He is Sean Swaney, a big mega babe, and he's gonna do proud in my absence.
well, no pressure there.
Thank you very much for doing the intros, Brett.
Thank you,
Yes.
Brett.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm gonna go now because I don't want to crash my car. I'm driving down Pacific Coast Highway. Like the Pacific Ocean is over here. It's nighttime. You can't really see. But yeah, live from the Pacific Ocean. You guys have a good night.
Nice.
Woo.
Thanks,
Have a
Fran.
good night, Brett. Safe drive.
See you guys later.
Yeah.
Have a good recap.
Don't crash. Alrighty. So we're just going to be talking through the episode as usual. If anyone has any comments, just leave them in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the episode. But for now, do you guys just want to get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I always ask that, but the answer is always yes. I should really find something else.
No.
Yeah, we can just sit here. This episode in particular, we open, and I felt like for the first 6 or 7 minutes of the episode, it's just recapping. It's just people talking about Setu splitting the votes and how dumb it was, and people kind of laughing about it, which was kind of funny to see. Sean, you were there when all of that happened. Were you guys immediately aware when you saw that it was a 3-2-1? What happened?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a little bit different for me because I was filming the close-ups at Tribal Council, so I was right there as Hunter was tallying the votes to know who to get the close-up on. So that's why you see Setu have a nice close-up of his surprised reaction.
You did really good with that.
All right.
It's so good.
But yeah, I don't think I think Hunter kind of told us what he thought was going to happen, that it was going to be rocks and we weren't going to know, but we kind of knew that Setu kind of messed his own boot up after processing it a little bit. So it wasn't blatantly obvious. Yeah,
fair enough. Kind of gives a confessional and he says he put a little bit too much faith in Setu's game knowledge, which is fair. Erica gives a confessional as well about saying how it's kind of an awkward position because now Lindsay's aware that Erica and Connor were out together, which is not that unusual in Survivor, but in this particular season, because we had 7 votes of basically unanimous votes. This really hasn't happened all that much in this season.
Yeah,
Connor says,
to be fair, I think when you get down that low in the numbers, when there's just 5 of you together at camp and 2 of you voted against one person, I feel like maybe that's not as bad as early on when it's you don't really know what's happening, or a merge, there's a million people. I think when you've known each other for that long, it was that calculated, not a crazy last minute thing. That is a little more awkward than normal. But yeah, I think part of it is that there's been so many unanimous votes this season that it's just a little bit different than what they're used to.
Yeah, I don't even know, and I could be wrong in thinking this, but I don't really think Erica and Lindsay were really working together shy of the group majority, because they were on different tribes before the merge. And then, you have at the merge, you very quickly have my boot, Stefan's boot, Kitty's boot, which Stefan's boot wasn't as unanimous, but I don't think those two were actively going off together. So I do think it's interesting that, even though they weren't working together, there wasn't any bad blood, there wasn't any tension, but now there's this clear line in the sand saying, okay, well, now we've pitted ourselves against each other via this Setu vote.
Yeah, I do think it's a little different than when it's, say, someone that you thought was with you or someone you knew more and had worked with, because then you can kind of talk it out. But when it's someone that you already don't kind of talk to them or have a relationship with them, and then you find out they're targeting you, but you're still there, and then it's you're not really going to talk that out, because if you haven't been working together and they targeted you, then why would you bother compared to a situation where maybe you could patch a relationship up. There's no relationship to patch up. So that could be where the awkward is coming from.
Exactly.
Right.
It's the first time that Erica has gone against Lindsay. And if we saw how Lindsay played her game, is that was the eventual reasoning for getting someone like Corey out. So, it's just interesting how, the dynamics of the game massively change from start to end game. We'll call it. We'll call it the end. We're not quite there yet, but
yeah,
it's close enough.
Close enough.
Well, okay. Another thing we get is basically Connor reveals that he just didn't tell Kaya that he was gonna fuck this up and go for a 3-3 tie. And so there's a little bit of a fallout between them two. Heather, what did you think about Connor just keeping Kaya in the dark about this? Because he really could have alienated her with this.
Yeah, see, I was a little confused because he talked to her about the idea, so I didn't get the sense. I guess he told her before tribal that he wasn't going to do it, but he didn't really completely keep her in the dark because he told her about the idea.
Yeah, I get the sense that he just kind of floated it out there, and as soon as she kind of freaked out about it, he was like, "Oh, just kidding."
Yeah,
and
so it's if he didn't, since he told her the idea, I think if he didn't tell her that he was ultimately doing it, I think it's because of a reason. There's a reason for it if he chose not to tell her he was going to do it when he already told her about the plan.
Right. That, and the other big thing before the opening credits is probably maybe Lindsay played a phenomenal game and stuff. Obviously, she goes out and she's probably definitely the most popular person this season. But she gives a confessional, which I think might be her worst one. And she says, Kaya and Sarah both want to take me to the end. So if I'm in the final 3, I might just throw the final immunity challenge because they'll both take me. Granted, she does correct this later on in the episode. But for now, that was her line of thinking, which obviously wasn't correct because we see both Kaya and Sarah this episode talking about how Lindsay needs to go.
Yeah, so, even if it was right, it's just worrying to be thinking about what you're going to do in the final 3 immunity challenge when you're at final 5. Yeah. So that confessional is one of the few from Lindsay in this entire season that really stressed me out because I was like, no, don't stop your final 5. Focus on final 5.
Yeah. And I think to an extent, though, that kind of thought has gotten Lindsay to where she has been in the game and has made her an incredibly successful player. It's that locked in mindset to be, hyper focused on the final 2 or the final 3 alliance to get you to that stage that got her through tribal stage, that got her, to protect her allies early on and set her up in a good position. But at the same time, in being so focused on that final 2 and final 3, she kind of forgot in this episode clearly that there was, a couple of steps to get there, which proved to be her downfall.
Yeah, I think focusing on having a really set final 3 that she definitely wants to happen, excluding any immunity challenge wins. I think that is good to have that focus. It's just because you have to be a few steps ahead, in terms of how you're thinking in the game, and that's how she did get as far as she did. But what you do in the final immunity challenge is not something that needs to be planned in advance the way who you're in that challenge with needs to be planned in advance. So I think that, to me, was showing more that she was maybe distracted in a sense than just thinking about who she wanted to be there with, because I think that was good. But when she's thinking about that, she's not as much thinking about how am I going to get to the end with these 3. So she was kind of a step too far. Because if she was focusing more on that, maybe she could have, I don't know, it's hard to say, but maybe she could have been able to keep Kaya on her side and keep her from flipping if she'd been focusing more on that.
Maybe. One more thing we get as well is we get Erica and Sarah talking, and I feel like it's kind of a weird dynamic between the two because on paper I would have expected those to be the closest 2 allies, considering that they're the only 2 people left in the game that are over 25. They're not in their early 20s. They were both on the same original Carbonado tribe, so you think that they would kind of be natural allies. But I looked at the voting stats before, and the last 3 tribal councils they've been on opposite sides. So what do you guys think about Sarah and Erica? Really, I feel like they're pretending to be a duo and pretending that they can still work together, but neither of them really trust each other at this point.
Yeah, and I think we can almost say it harkens back to the days before the swap, where the Carbonado tribe only went to tribal once, and so loyalties and alliances weren't really tested. So Sarah and Erica, never really got the chance to vote together outside of the Molly boot before the merge. And then at that point, loyalties and strategy had massively shifted to the point where, they both were on starkly contrasting sides, with Sarah being now kind of ingratiated into this female / Wilkeson driven alliance, whereas Erica was coming at it from, trying to figure out if she wanted to be with Emma or Connor and just trying to figure out her way. So I think they definitely played a different game, but I do agree that, while you might think that they could work together, I think a lot of that is placating. And they were probably just having a conversation to have it, but neither was really giving that the full weight of their strategic consideration.
No, I agree. What about you, Heather?
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of sad for me because I would have liked to have seen them work together, but I just feel like they've gotten so off the same page as each other that they were just never going to really trust each other again.
I feel like Erica, though, in particular, though, she's... I was looking at... My friend did, the Edgic up of the season so far, and she was pretty under the radar until about the point where... not that Edgic is anything, but, until the point where Emma got booted. And you can see kind of, a natural progression in her game where I really think that even though Emma was her strongest ally, I think Emma being booted was probably the best thing that's ever happened to her game, because she's been so... more forthcoming in her strategic discussions, and she's been out there a whole lot more. So I'm actually very impressed with Erica's kind of recent transformation.
Yeah, I said on Reddit earlier today, it made me wish that, because I was thinking the exact same thing, and I was saying I wish that Emma had gotten voted out a little bit earlier, because I think Erica is so much more interesting of a player when she's on her own. Sorry, Emma, but I do think that's part of the reason why we've seen the change in her edit, is because there's been a clear change in her game. I mean, it was definitely smart of her to kind of let Emma be the figurehead and to ride under the radar. But I do think that she did it a little bit longer than she needed to the point where it's going to be harder for her to win over the jurors possibly than if she had started playing her own game a little bit sooner.
Potentially. I think Erica, though, and this is obviously biased because I, was aligned with Erica and I got along with Erica and worked with her. I got to see Erica's game. Erica's game is very subtle, and I don't think it translates well on camera into an edit, but I think saying that Erica is now just emerging as a player is a bit of a disservice to the way that she played. And
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean it like that. But yeah,
no, and I totally agree that Emma going has forced her to play a different kind of game. And if we talk about the Erica and Sarah dynamic again, it's both two players who want to do this anybody but me. I'll kind of go where the wind takes me. Mindset. But with Emma leaving, Erica now has to stick her feet in the sand and say, okay, this is who I want to stick with, and has to make these bigger, bolder decisions like we see with, going after Satu and aligning with Connor. It's not a, kind of go with the tide. It's, I'm going to pick a decision. I have to go with it, and I have to be a little bit more forthright with my thinking and choosing here.
Yeah, I mean, when I said that, to be clear, I just not that I don't think she was playing the game. I don't think that she's... We've seen a lot of players in Survivor over the years who will just ride coattails without much thought behind it. I think that she was playing strategically, just not necessarily, at least from what we've seen on a TV show, and the way that tends to be rewarded by the jury. I also, just from a selfish point of view, want to see this style of gameplay from Erica more, because it makes such good TV and it's so entertaining. I wish I could have more of it, because now I feel like I've finally been seeing why you guys love Erica so much, and now I love her too, and there's one more episode left, so it's kind of sad.
Yeah. She had a confessional after she won immunity. I'm jumping a little bit, but after she won immunity, she gave a confessional. That was maybe my favorite one she's given so far. And she was just talking about I didn't expect to be this invested, and I feel like I'm going to cry because I've won immunity and I just want to be safe. And I was like, oh, that's so nice. But yeah, no, I don't want to sound like I'm discrediting Erica's earlier game or anything. I saw a lot of, obviously everyone was really sad that Lindsay got booted this episode. And there were a lot of YouTube commenters that were like, that Lindsay was the only person that was playing the game.
What?
I was like, shut up.
That's not true.
You're it. Yeah, not to take anything away from Lindsay, but everyone was playing
big moves.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Even then, we've seen plenty of proof that Connor's making moves Kaya's been a little bit more quiet until this week in like the post-merge, but like pre-merge she had everything with the idol. Like I feel like there's plenty of evidence she was playing. Like Sarah may be a little paranoid, not always aware of what's going on, but she's definitely playing. And Erica has played more under the radar until recently, but even now she's playing much more actively. So if anyone is watching who said that, you're wrong.
Yeah, no, I can't think of anyone out of the whole 16 that didn't go out and play their hardest and all of that. Like even Shrey, I feel like was talking to everyone. Just like everyone was good. What else did we do? Erica admits that she's aligned with Connor, which kind of ruffles feathers with Sarah as well. I think that might have been like she might have misspoke because Sarah kind of felt like that was her position in the alliance. That maybe wasn't as good. That kind of drove a wedge further between Erica and Sarah.
Like if they weren't voting together and they weren't like I don't really understand why that upset her so much unless she was just trying to get back in with Erica, and when she found out that Erica was aligned with Connor, she was like, oh, well, that's not going to happen. I didn't get why she was upset about that because she wasn't aligned with Erica anymore. She was aligned with Lindsay.
Yeah, and it was clear that Erica and Connor were working together based on the vote. So I don't think it was any big surprise. If anything, Erica was showing a bit of loyalty and an olive branch and saying, yeah, that's who I voted with. That's who I'm aligned with. I would also like to work with you. Let's entertain that thought. You know, whether that was her true intention, I don't know. I wasn't, you know, there. I'm not in her head to know. But, you know, I think she does more damage by saying, no, Connor and I aren't aligned. We're not working together, when clearly they had just voted together the episode prior. Yeah,
that would have been very transparent. Speaking as well of like the Lindsay and Erica thing, where they just really haven't connected on like a strategic level this game. Lindsay gives a confessional where she's like, I don't really care about Erica. She's gone. Like, it's fine. Like, I might have a strategic conversation with her, but like, I don't really care. And then she corrects herself and says, I'm probably not going to be taken to the end unless I don't win the final challenge. But that brings us to the immunity challenge with the domino stacks. Erica wins, which is really nice. They had to have like a little, they had to have like a little bit of a rule change midway through.
Yeah, I never would have agreed to that. Maybe just because I have terrible luck. So if I was there 100%, someone else's tower is knocking over mine. But I would not have, I don't know what the alternative was, but I was like, I would not have agreed to that.
Yeah, I think it depends on which table you were at. If you were at the one that was slanted, I mean, albeit Hunter's family weed whacked, you know, that entire field where we did challenges. And so if you're on the table that's, you know, level and sturdy, you attest to that and you say, nope, we're not changing. But if you're on the table that's slanted, you fight for that tooth and nail because you know that you're not going to be able to stack anything with height, you know, if it, you know, is.
I would have been like, freeze, find a new spot for the table.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know the circumstance of the agreement. But I mean, even can I also say, can we talk about, I'm sorry, what were you going to say? You can go first.
I was just going to say that Lindsay said that she was thinking about just kind of like tipping her tower into Erica's, but she really should have done.
That's what I was thinking. That's what I was thinking when they got on that table, that someone could have just taken like the Sophie approach and just tried to like gang up on one person.
Yeah, or like me when I'm losing Monopoly and just kind of like kick the table and have everyone's fall, like right when there's like 10 seconds left. I like Kaya's last ditch tower where she just kind of like stacked the dominoes like that, just because she like she wanted something there. Anyway, yeah, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say the moment that stood out to me, and that was when I don't know whose tower was it knocked over. Who was it? Kaya's knocked over Connor's.
Yeah.
But when that happens, like Kaya just stands. She backs away. Like I feel like my instinct would have been like, go for it. Not that it would have worked, but just like my instinct would have been jumping forward, trying hopelessly to save it. And then she's just like shocked. And then Sarah's just picking up all the pieces on the ground. So it's like props to Sarah for really having her head in the game, because that is so shocking when your tower falls and knocks over your closest ally. And Sarah's just like not even processing. She's just like picking up the pieces immediately. So I was like, good on her.
Yeah, because I think you notice at this point, like it wasn't, part of it was to build the highest tower, but a part of it was to how many towers you're going to end up with, how many dominoes you have, because they quickly became a hot commodity. And if you didn't have enough tiles to literally build a tall enough tower, you were out of the game, regardless of whether you could build it or not, because you didn't have the tiles to do so. So part of it becomes, if you don't have the tallest tower, hope someone falls and then grab as many tiles as you can. One, so you can keep them and build a tall tower, but two, so that you prevent your, comrades or prevent your enemies from doing it.
Yeah,
I really could have gotten a Kaya and Sarah 2.0 wrestling on the ground in that case.
Oh, that would be really funny.
They're very close.
Yeah, I think this challenge can definitely be reworked for season 3 before it gets brought back. So yeah, maybe just make sure things are steady. That's the only real thing I have for the challenge. Basically, we get back to camp, and like 2/3 of the scenes from here on out are about bulges and pockets, because Lindsay thinks that Erica's hiding an idol in her pocket. She calls her out on it, and it's just chapstick, which is like a really funny, like kind of anticlimactic. Connor fakes having like a Tupperware lid in his pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But the main takeaway from this scene is that Sarah actually finds the idol, which good for her. I feel like I think it was you, Heather, talked a lot about when Emma had 2 idols. It's kind of like the worst person you want to have with an idol, just because of the fact that she's so self-confident that she's like really never going to play it. Sarah, on the other hand, I feel like is the complete opposite in that she would play it immediately, even if she was safe.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I feel like part of me is kind of glad that she didn't find it before Final 5. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered anyways, because she still hasn't gotten a vote against her, right?
Nope.
But because I feel like it just would have driven her like insane having that idol and having to choose whether or not to play it, when this time it was her last chance to. So there wasn't really a choice to be made. But I'm kind of glad, because I don't want to see, like, I would have felt bad for the stress that she would have had, because it would have been really bad.
Yeah. Well, when she found it, she was talking to the camera, and she's like, I'm almost for sure going to play it. I'm going to use it tonight, or it'll just stick in my head. But I was like, it's the final time to use it. That you should probably, it shouldn't be a question.
Yeah.
So that was
the interesting thing, though, is her phrasing of why she wants to use it. She uses 2 words that are, starkly opposed to each other. She said that she's going to play it for protection and not for power, which I think is really interesting to think about the way that Sarah is playing this game at this point. Sarah will readily admit, and has done in the confessionals, that she's incredibly paranoid at this stage of the game. And so rather than using the idol as a strategic tool to get herself and her allies further in the game, she's using the idol solely as a means of protecting herself. So I don't know, obviously she plays it and it's a good thing, but I don't know if Sarah's, paranoia and in trying to just protect herself prevented her from really using the idol effectively, in all of that. Obviously she was safe, and, who am I to say anything, but I wonder what she could have done if she had taken a moment to step back and say, wait, okay, I have this idol. I don't think anyone is voting for me, but how can I ensure that myself and the people that I want to get to the next stage and stages with are ensured to be there? And I think potentially using that idol as a leverage tool instead of protection could have been interesting.
Right. I mean, I think ultimately, accidentally, what she did was really good, where she came back to camp and there was a very obvious bulge in her pocket, because that kind of stifled any plans that Kaya would have had to get her out. So accidentally, that's good. I do count this as a
Is it good,
misplay,
though? Because if Kaya voted for Sarah, then Sarah would have successfully used the idol, and then Connor goes home.
I'm just saying,
wouldn't that have been better for Sarah?
Sarah only got 1 vote. She wouldn't have gone home regardless.
No.
No, I meant if Kaya, presumably if Kaya had not had any reason to think that she had the idol and tried to get Erica and Connor to vote out Sarah instead. I don't know if maybe they wouldn't have gone for that, and Kaya would have just gone rogue and forced a tie.
My line of thinking, though, is that just like, if you have an idol, you want to get as far as you can without playing it. So if you can use the idol to bluff in some sort of way to otherwise get the votes off you, that's perfect. So
worked
yeah,
for Joe.
she unintentionally attracted votes away from herself by having the bulge in her pocket. I think she obviously should have played it for Lindsay, this tribal council, though, because I don't see any scenario where Connor really works with her, whereas at least Lindsay was planning on taking her to the final 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what you're saying with how she said that it was like she was not using it for power, she was using it for protection. Because if she was using it for power, then it would have made a lot more sense to take the OG Randy Bailey strategy, the strategy Joe successfully used on Survivor this season, where you purposely get the votes on yourself, then use the idol to ensure that you're using it correctly, compared to the way it happened where she was going to use it on herself regardless, but if people know that she has it, then they're going to vote elsewhere. So when she plays it for herself, then she doesn't negate the votes and the vote does not go in her best interest. But she's still ensured that she's safe. So I think it's with her intention in using it, I think it was bad for her that Kaya was able to identify that she had it. But if she was willing to use it to like gain numbers and willing to take the gamble, which is a risky gamble, but if she was willing to do it, then it would have worked, because then if she was able to know, like making it obvious that she had it in her pocket and ensuring that they weren't going to vote for her, then she could have saved Lindsay, and then she would have the numbers and Connor would be gone, who, as you said, is someone that isn't going to work with her.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's an interesting question then. So I was brushing up on the Survivor Orting rulebook, a couple months ago, and I read an interesting line because I didn't.
Is there an official rulebook?
Yeah, I didn't read it before the game, but I looked at it after to check something. And one of the statements in regards to idol hunting says that production, you have the option, if you do find an idol, to have production hold onto it until right before tribal. So that way, it doesn't have to be in your pocket. It doesn't whatever, which I think is a really interesting thing.
That should change.
Doing that correctly, so I'm not just spouting BS at this point. But, we think about Wes, who had an idol found in his possession searched by Connor. Everyone is searching through possessions. And so I think it's really interesting that, if you had read the rules and you were cognizant of it, is it better to have your idol in your pocket and shown so you could potentially try to double the effect of it for you and an ally, or do you hide it solely so that way no one knows about it and it's completely out of your possession? But I just thought it was an interesting tidbit that I remember from the rule book and thinking, well, yeah, that way you don't even have to hold on to the idol, because you can't really leave camp to go hide it somewhere because you're all so confined.
No, especially considering this episode, Lindsay tells Sarah to go distract Connor while Kai and Lindsay go through all of this shit. And apparently they lost a bowl or something of his as well while they were going through his shit, which is funny. That shouldn't be a rule. I don't know if that's officially in the rule book, but if that is, I'm gonna help get that changed for season 3, because that's
there
part
are
of
edits I would like to make. But yeah, I saw that and I was very surprised because I didn't think that was a good rule. But if if I had read it and thought about it, then it could be used very effectively. So word to the wise for next season, or anyone that's on a future season, read the rule book. You never know what kind of gems.
Wouldn't that have been funny?
Another reason why I should not apply. I'm not good with large
books.
I don't have the attention. There's a reason why I did not become a lawyer like 8th grade me was intending. I'm not do not have the attention span.
Oh. Well, wouldn't that have been funny if Connor actually found the idol, gave it to production to hold, and then Lindsay and Kaya went through all of his shit and were like, well, he definitely doesn't have it. And then he comes and whips it out in tribal council. Yeah, that should change. That's bad.
Yeah.
We get to, do you guys have anything else before we get to tribal council? Because that's all my notes from beforehand.
Looking at my notes, I do think there's an interesting confessional, and I think obviously we need to cover it before we hit tribal, where Kaya, it's shit. Okay, well, both of my closest allies are targeting each other. Well, what do I do? And I think at this point, Kaya realizes that she has to choose. There's no more protecting both of them. Obviously she has multiple routes to the 4 to the 3 with each of these individuals, but now she's between a rock and a hard place and she has to choose one of them. So I do think that definitely colors the way that she listens to tribal council to try and figure out what's going on. Obviously, as her vote is now the swing vote, I think, without people really realizing it at that point.
Yeah, I want to give props, one, to Kaya. We went to a final 5 vote where the 2 people that she wanted out were immune. So there were really only 3 options, and Kaya's name, I feel like, was the only name this whole episode that really didn't get floated around for a potential boot option. So I think she's playing phenomenally. Do you have any thoughts on that, Heather?
Yeah. On what part specifically? On Kaya's name not being thrown out, or on her decision?
Well, that, and then also Kaya's dilemma.
Yeah, I think is that it wasn't. She did literally have to pick a side because Erica was immune and Sarah obviously had the idol. So it wasn't as much the fact that her two allies were targeting each other. It was just there was literally no one else for her to vote for. Like, it's just down to that point in the game. But yeah, I mean, that's tough. That's tough. I feel for Kaya because I wouldn't have really known what to do in that situation, because I don't feel like she really has a particularly strong relationship with Sarah or Erica, and I wouldn't want to go to the ends with Lindsay or Connor. So I feel like it's kind of a toss up. I don't feel like any situation is great. So
I disagree.
I definitely sympathize with the struggle. Really?
I think.
I mean, you are out there, so you know I can't read the jury that well.
And obviously, I know the extent of the season and past what has been aired, and this doesn't affect it. But if you look at both sides, you have someone who Kaya is very closely aligned with, be it Lindsay, be it Connor, or someone that she, isn't working with directly, but, would easily present her a route to a final three alliance, being Sarah or Erica. So I think it's interesting that, both sides are fairly mirrored in terms of, we'll call it the composition or the stereotype of the breakdown. And she just has to choose which side she wants to get to the final three on, because from a strategic standpoint, obviously, whenever it's 3 against 1, you just pick off the person who's the one. So I think she ends up with a final 3, regardless, based on the position that she has put herself in at this point.
Oh, yeah. I just don't know in terms of like which group she would win with. If I had to pick, I would say maybe it's hard to say because it depends on what Connor would do. But looking at Erica versus Sarah, I think maybe Sarah would be more likely to take Kaya to the end if she won, whereas I feel like Erica is loyal to Connor and she's just a loyal person, so I think she would keep her word and take him. I don't know if Connor would cut Kaya. I don't know if I want to see him in that position where he has to choose between Erica and Kaya. But so it depends on how confident she is that Connor would take her to the end. But looking at it from that perspective, I could see the case for sticking with Lindsay, but there's definitely not a clear best choice there.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, Kaya was frantic at that moment and trying to figure out what to go on. But I do think she put herself in a very, very good situation, from the alliances she had and the relationships she built to kind of be on either side and to really choose the dynamic for the rest of the game.
The only other thing I wanted to add as well before Tribal Council that I just thought of again is that we were talking about before with Erica and there being like a little bit of a perception that she's taking the backseat in like her duo with Emma. She's got a duo with Connor now, and I feel like I would kind of classify Connor as the brains behind that duo again. You'll see that both of them together really have the plan to get together Lindsay. And earlier on in the episode, you see Erica putting in a lot of work with Sarah, and Erica gives confessionals about how she thinks Sarah's on board, that Sarah, her, and Connor are going to be the ones that vote out Lindsay. Later on in the episode, Connor actually works on bringing Kaya. But out of the two of them, Connor's is the only one that's effective. Like, Sarah doesn't vote with them. So I feel like that's another point in against Erica in the sense that she's not, yes, she's putting herself out there to kind of flip people and make connections and stuff, but she just hasn't been as successful as her allies have been, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there.
But yeah, we get to Tribal Council. I have a few notes. One of my notes is that Hunter is so mean to Connor. I was like watching it because he said, he kind of grills him and he says, I've got the direct quotes here. You would think that an intelligent man like yourself would be a strategic mastermind. But what is it about your game that makes it a valid game? And Connor's like, sorry, what? And I was like,
is Connor not down on himself enough as it is, Hunter? I think Hunter just kind of didn't communicate what he was trying to ask, though. Like, he was trying to just get him to talk about playing a social game and why it's valid. But it just kind of got lost in him trying to set it up by saying, you're not so, like, you're someone we'd expect to be strategic, but you're not.
Yeah, he later corrected himself and kind of phrased it in the sense that, what is it about your game that is like underrated or something, or overlooked by others? But yeah, no, that initial
wording, like, there's nothing. There's nothing underrated about my game. My game's not very good. Take me.
Yeah.
And especially in tribal council where so much double talk is happening, where you're trying to not only, say enough to make sure Hunter doesn't come back to you so you don't reveal anything, but you also have to instill trust instill, confidence in the people you're working with. So I think that's a really difficult question to flat out say, like, hey, why are you not playing this way? Or why is your game this way? At which point, like, when down to 5, the last thing you want is someone putting a big target saying, like, hey, like, let's look at how this person's game is and point to why it's good or bad, where you don't want the target on you at that point.
And then it's a balancing act as well, because you're in front of the jury, and if you kind of talk yourself down in front of the jury, they might overlook you, and it's a lot of stuff. Hunter also says, which I think is really funny, I don't think I've ever seen in Survivor that you guys are also close with one another, and he talks about how that's changing the way the votes are, but you like jump cut to as they're voting, they're all like bickering with each other and like arguing with each other when they're not even supposed to be talking. So
it's
like,
not the first time that's happened either.
Yeah. With them, it was Sarah and Kaya arguing back and forth. I wrote down the quote. Sarah is saying, because you're so nervous about that, it makes me feel like I'm in trouble. You're so nervous that I could have the idol. It was the freaking buff the entire fucking time. Sean, you were there. Do you know what kind of sparked that argument between Sarah and Kaya?
I don't. I wish I did remember, but I really don't get the point of Sarah going off here. I think she's going to play her idol in 20 seconds, 30 seconds anyway. So what's the point of lying to someone that could be around that you would want to work with? Like at that point, that doesn't instill trust when you say, I don't have the idol. It's just the bulge in my pocket. It's just the buff. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, no, just kidding. It is an idol. Like then it instills a level of distrust within the person. So I'm really surprised that she addressed it so bluntly with a lie to someone that she had was planning on voting with in that tribal.
Yeah, it was strange because it seemingly came out of
votes to herself. I don't quite know what was going on there.
I think it's a bit too late when Lindsay's already casted her vote.
Yeah,
they shouldn't be allowed to talk in that time. No, yeah, I figured it seemed like it came out of nowhere, but the fact that Sarah was addressing it was the buff the whole time made me feel like Kaya must have said something to her because that was Kaya's problem. But it wasn't in tribal council, so I have no idea what happened there.
Yeah,
but I don't think that was a good look. And then you'll see when Sarah actually goes to play it, Kaya's like rolling her eyes and being like, "Yeah, I knew
it." Gotta love Kaya.
Yeah, Kaya's great. She's sassy.
And her reactions in general during like the vote, it's like she's so stressed about it. Her faces are so funny.
Yeah. Lindsay goes out in a 3-2 vote. Connor actually throws the lid in the fire that he was keeping in the pocket, and I was like, "What?" Now there's a container back at camp that like doesn't have a lid on it. Like you could have just.
It was very like dramatic.
You could have just gone back to camp and like not wasted that lid. Now some food's gonna go off.
It just held an electronic light, so I don't think it really.
Oh, was it? I thought it was like a food container. It
wasn't anything critical.
Still.
But
we have Kaya clarifying some things in the chat. Do you want me to read it to you? Or do you want to
yeah, sure.
So she said, first she said, I'm a little confused about this because she said she believes the rule books also said the idols would be hidden in the confessional area, which I thought they were.
But then challenge that wasn't hidden.
Oh, right. Oop.
We can talk about that if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, we can talk about that. Not on. Yeah.
Oh, so but then she said she heard. I was thinking she was talking about Sarah's idol. I was confused, but she heard Sarah start to talk to Erica about her seeing Sarah's idol during Lindsay's vote. So she turned around. So like Sarah had turned to Erica and said something to her about Kaya seeing her idol while Lindsay was voting. So Sarah started it, and then Kaya was just like, "Hey, I can hear that. What's she doing?"
Well, good on you, Kaya, for calling the bluff and seeing it how it is and trying to figure out.
I did a good job of summarizing that for people who watch.
Thank you very much, Kaya.
Love Kaya. I actually met Kaya and Connor this week. Well, not met Connor. Saw Connor and met Kaya. Yeah, they were in New York. So I was like more nervous about meeting Kaya than I was about anyone else. Oh. I was like, "Oh, hey, Suri, you look so cute." I was like, "Oh my God, it's Kaya."
Oh, they know-it-alls.
They're both great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Well, Lindsay goes out in this episode. Do you guys kind of want to just do like a ode to Lindsay? Because consider she was such a big character this game. What are you your like overall impressions of like Lindsay and Lindsay's game and all of that?
Yeah, I can go. I mean, I think from being there, Lindsay played a fantastic game. You know, obviously, I'm a bit biased because Lindsay, you know, is arguably the reason I was voted off in the way I was. So, who am I to really like to be bitter without like lauding the game that she played? She did a fantastic job. Lindsay constantly had people loyal to her. She had people going close to her. She was formidable in the challenges that she played in. I think Lindsay played a very strong game, but I do wonder, and I'm interested to hear y'all's thoughts on this, is does Lindsay's game in itself destruct upon herself in the end stage? So Lindsay focused for a long time on getting the big targets out. You know, I want to get the girls together, but I want to focus on the big targets. Let's get Emma, let's get Kitty out because I perceive them as a threat. And so at this stage of the game, Lindsay has been, you know, hasn't been quiet about the fact that she's a good player. She's been out front making moves. So does Lindsay's game implode upon itself when she's the most threatening person out there based on the game that she's played? I think Lindsay has played a fantastic game, and had she gotten to a final two, I don't see any way the jury doesn't vote for her. But I do think it's interesting that her game in and itself could have cannibalized herself.
No, right. I think Lindsay was like totally. I think she was one of the best players this season. She was phenomenal. I think she's the biggest lock to, if like returning player seasons are the thing, she's the biggest lock to come back. I think her most impressive thing was actually coordinating your boot, Sean, just because I think she had the ability to rally so many people. Sorry, I just think like her ability to rally so many people pre-merge and have it come basically already be set what the merge vote was going to be beforehand. That was super impressive. I think she always had a finger on the pulse. She always had a couple different options in where she could go. Your point about her game always exploding in the final like 5 or end game, I think it does. I think the less number of people in the season, the better Lindsay does. Because the longer the season goes on, the more time people have to realize that she's the biggest threat. Granted, it took pretty crappy scenarios in which Erica won immunity, Sarah was immune, for her to go out at 5. So like without that, she probably would have gotten to the final 4, which is super close. I think she definitely has like the potential to win on all that. But yeah, there was definitely, she made herself too big of a target at the end. But I can't really fault her for that. She was just too good. What about you?
At the same time, too, we talk about, you talked earlier, you know, Lindsay had her eyes set on the prize. She was looking at final three challenge, and the final 2. So she definitely was looking upon that. And I don't think this stage was the one that she was focused on at this time. But I think she deserves a lot of credit for getting to where she did, the way she played, and for setting herself up the way she did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what about you, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to really give any legitimate criticisms of Lindsay's game because something that we had talked about around like the time when they were about to merge was that with the game that she played, like she was going to pretty much have to keep playing hard all the way to the end, like kind of Tony it to really get to final 2 because that was just the game that she played. So it's so hard to even say because you have to look so far back in terms of what you would even change. The only thing I could really say, and it's very easy to say, seeing how the vote went, was maybe getting rid of who was immune last week?
Kaya.
It wasn't. Okay. For a second, my mind like freaked out seeing Erica was. But I think obviously not Situ voted for her, but I think getting rid of Erica or getting rid of Connor last week probably would have been the better choice for her. But it's easy to say that knowing the way Situ voted, because this was a situation like we saw in Second Chance when they voted Abby out, where Abby voted the way the majority told her to, but it was the majority that voted her out. So like she was with their group, but they still voted her out because they just didn't like trust her really. So knowing that Situ was voting with them, it's possible to say maybe they should have. I mean, because the thing is that it really depends on how easy he was to read for them, because I think in terms of players that were so threatening, I think that Erica and Connor were much more threatening players to Lindsay because they were onto her game and they were like smart players and they knew they had to get rid of her. Satu just presents different challenges because he's not predictable. So I definitely don't like judge her for making that decision, but that's the only one that I can really look at and say maybe she should have done something differently, because some of the circumstances too, like Stefan got idled out. I don't know that he would have been coming for her so hard if he was in the end game. And I think with Kitty, that was just a circumstance where she got caught trying to vote Emma out and she very impressively got herself back in with the numbers, but I think her options were a little bit limited considering the circumstances there. So while she did kind of vote out a lot of big targets, I think just the circumstances surrounding them, like, I mean, and Emma did have to go for maybe not that suit, but with the idols and everything, like, I just think there are too many elements to really like nitpick Lindsay's game for me. But I do see where you guys are coming from.
Yeah, I think where she really, if we want a Monday morning quarterback this, I think getting out Satu was probably not a good move for her, because if you want to, albeit I've seen Cambodia once, it was a garbage season. But Abby was not aligned with the majority. She was with, that minority of women, whereas Satu was bought in.
Abby was on an island of Abby more.
Sure, we'll call it that. But Satu was bought in hook, line, and sinker with Lindsay, especially after Emma was gone. He was, we can discuss Satu's game in more depth later if you want, but Satu was loyal to Lindsay, and all of a sudden she got rid of someone who was outright loyal to her, and losing a majority in that. So I do think had she kept Satu around, she could have told him to vote however, and he would have done so, where she couldn't have done that with Connor or Erica in this situation. So I do think if there's something to go back in a time machine and do, it's probably to, save Satu at that vote. But hindsight's 2020. We're all, only one person wins, and 15 people are going to be looking back saying I should have done 13 different things.
And I don't even know if that was that bad, because you consider Satu gave a lot of confessionals in his boot episode where he seemed like he was actively contemplating voting out Lindsay and saying that if we do vote out Lindsay, we won't have to be pressured and or the water well, and he can play his own game. So I don't think, at least from, I mean, I wasn't there, but just from the confessionals that he gave, I don't think it was locked in that he was always going to follow Lindsay. And then second of all, I know that Sarah in particular was really set on voting out Satu. So if she tries too hard to fight that, maybe backlash occurs and she goes out earlier than she should have. I don't think that it's as cut and dry as she maybe shouldn't have gotten rid of Satu. But yeah.
Nora, I think that's one place that could have been more advantageous. Who knows? I'm the guy that got voted out unanimously at the merge. Don't take my advice.
Yeah, I'm someone who's never played and should not play. So no one should be listening to what I say or taking my criticisms.
You're going to be on season 3, Heather.
Oh, God, no.
Winner.
Oh, it'd be so bad.
Well, I think you could do.
Don't read my face.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm on the only regard in which I can compete with Kaya is just with my expressions, just totally giving away what I'm thinking.
Okay. Well, we'll rig it so you can be like RC or Jessica, and we'll just make you to the merge, and then you can get voted out, and you can just be on the jury.
Okay, but one, there's a merge.
Damn, I feel
that's certainly not on the jury in this format, and also
true.
The only circumstances in which that happens, it tends to be a strong tribe, and I am not someone who contributes in that regard. I mean,
that's fair enough. Yeah. Well, Sean, when you were voted out, when you were voted out at 10, were you aware that you weren't going to be on the jury?
Not at all.
But you thought you were going to be on?
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
I mean, you guys didn't know that there was going to be a final 2, did you?
Pardon?
You guys didn't know that there was going to be a final 2, did you? At least at that point?
No.
Is that not in the rule books?
Pardon?
Is that not in the rule books that there's going to be a final 2?
It might be. I don't know. I didn't read it till I came back. I watched the first episode of the first season. I think Celeste was robbed, but unsurprisingly got voted out. Beyond that, no. You can look at my pregame press. I said I wanted to make the merge because that's when I thought the jury was. I assumed that everyone that made it on the merge made the jury. So, yeah, I thought I was going to get a vote and was a little bit salty that I didn't, but life's life.
That's a shame.
Good on them for getting me out when I did.
No, as long as I'm working, like helping make these things, there will never be a final three. I despise the final three.
I think a final.
Do you like the final three?
Fantastic, but from a viewer standpoint, I think a final two is great. It prevents it shows up with some finality. It has people make cutthroat decisions that they wouldn't make knowing that there are three. That's my take.
Like I couldn't have said it better. Do you like the final three, Heather?
I don't have as strong feelings on it as most fans do, because I do just think that it's, I mean, on one hand, you could say that like, I don't know that it necessarily results in the best player always winning, even though it is like it makes it harder, but I don't know if it always results in the best player winning. I think if it was more of an endurance, how bad do you want it challenge always at final three, then in that case, I'm more down with it than, because sometimes, you know, if you just get a challenge that you're bad at, it's just, there's so many elements where it can be kind of like impossible to come up with a plan that's just completely going to work.
Yeah, I think it should always be a final two, and it should always, maybe not in the case of Survivor Washington because of time constraints, but I think like Hands on a Hard Idol should always be the last challenge, just because it's purely like willpower. Anyway, back to the episode. We're gearing up for the finale on Saturday now, not Sunday as usual. Particularly Heather, what do you think of the final four and their chances at winning? Does everyone have a path to the ending, and who is your winner pick?
Well, my predictions related to at least a few things so far have been right, in terms of thinking Connor would be the one to get Lindsay out. And I did say way back when that I thought that Kyle would cut Lindsay. So I've been right about a couple of things. So I'm going to stick with the train of thought and still keep Connor as my winner pick. But I do think, like, just looking at the game itself, that anyone could win. I mean, that's the thing that makes it so hard to predict in a final two season, because you can never say that there's more than one person at the absolute max who couldn't win. Because if there's two people who couldn't win and they're there at the end, then obviously one of them is going to win. So that makes it just really hard to predict. But just in terms of like what we've seen so far, in terms of like the story on the season, and in terms of gameplay and how people are positioned, I'm still sticking with Connor.
No, I do.
I think Sarah's going out next. And I don't have a prediction necessarily in terms of who is going to be in the final two with Connor, but that's just my prediction, is that I'll say Sarah goes next, Connor wins in final two. I won't try to predict too many details, because last time I did that, it was kind of a mixed bag.
That's right. Well, no, that's what I think I do kind of like about this final four, in the sense that in every modern Survivor season, there's always been goats where you're like, Troy's in, you can't win. I don't think there's anyone. I think there's people that are less likely to win than others, but I don't think anyone wipes the floor with someone else. Like, I feel like
especially now that Lindsay's gone.
Yeah, Lindsay was the only one where I felt like it was like maybe if she got to the end. But now everyone's got like a fairly decent shot. Whoever wins the final immunity challenge is going to have a dilemma on their hands, because there isn't a clear. It's not like, do I take Cass? Do I take Tony?
Yeah, definitely not. It's not. I don't know what it is. For some reason, it's just been really. Maybe it's because we don't have Ponderosa videos. Maybe that's why. But I just feel like it's been hard for me to read the jury, so I don't really know. I have a feeling, just because everyone loves a good underdog story, that they'd go for Connor, and because Lindsay's so likable and has been playing such a like dominant game. It's not, there may be a few people that she's pissed off, but not enough, I think, for it to become like a bitter jury situation. So those two, I feel like I know, but the other, like, I don't feel like I have a read on how the jury feels about Erica's game, other than like Emma or Sarah or Kaya's game. See, it's like my one concern with Kaya that may be kind of like an Aubrey situation where she has been making a lot of big decisions and has been having a lot of control and positioning herself very well. But at least to the viewer, she came off as like indecisive, which is like understandably so. I would have been too. But that's my worry with Kaya, is that maybe because if she did come off as indecisive, and the fact that it was Erica and Connor who voted for Lindsay the week before, and then she jumped on the second time, if the jury felt the same way that we feel, which I would imagine they do, that these people have to get Lindsay out because she's going to win at the end, if they have that perception, then I think the credit for the move is going to go more to Connor and Erica, just because they were more clearly with it and sticking to it. And then Kaya was the one who came in later, even though she was the one who made the decision that affected what actually happened. So like, she had all the power, but just the way the situation came off, I don't know if it may be an Aubrey situation where they just see her as being indecisive and maybe don't give her the credit for the move that she'd otherwise have. So that's pretty much the reason why I think that Connor may beat Kaya, because it's just so hard to judge with her because she comes off so likable to us that it's like, I feel like most of what we've seen of her has been her confessionals. So I don't know her relationships with other people and how they feel about her game. So I think that'd be an interesting matchup though. Like, I kind of want to see Kaya versus Connor. I feel like that'd be that'd be so good. It'd be like what Rob and Amber never gave us.
No. Just another thing as well to point out, like how great Kaya's playing. Lindsay gives her final words and she says, basically absolves Kaya and says that Sarah's the one that screwed her over. So I think Lindsay going out of the game was convinced that Sarah flipped, freaked out, played her idol, and Kaya was the one that voted with her. So for her to not even suspect that Kaya and Connor were a close thing is perfect.
Yeah.
So,
I also do.
I mean, presumably she will find out between now and final tribal council from whoever is fourth voted out, and then third voted out, she'll end up finding out, so that we'll see how she reacts to that information. It may make her more of a bitter juror if she finds out that it was Kaya, someone that she thought of as a close friend, or she may respect the move because she's a big fan and she was playing a big game herself. So that's someone who she's interested to see.
Someone who she saved on a number of times when like Sheree was gonna go home, all that.
Yeah.
Like Lindsay
See,
really
it's hard to say because I think Lindsay is the kind of personality where she would want to vote, like she wouldn't want to be someone who voted bitter. So I think if it was a normal circumstance where like final 5, there's like a few days in between when you get voted off and when you like vote for a winner. But in Survivor Washington, she has like an hour or 2 to get over it, and then she's voting, and that depends on when she even finds out how much time she has processed the information. If Lindsay had more time, then I think she still would vote for Kaya, even though she may be upset that she betrayed her. But just in the circumstance, she may not have enough time to get over it and may not vote for her in that circumstance.
Right.
Well, I think one thing too that we're overlooking at this point is there's a lot of game left to be played, especially with the final 2. Is there's still 3 tribal councils. Pardon me, we're at 4 now. There's still 2 tribal councils to go, and someone can effectively make or break this game within the next 2 tribal councils. So the question is, how can someone bolster their resume while also ensuring that they still have a shot at getting to the final 2? Whereas you might, have to extend so far to try to get to the final 2 that essentially you crash and burn. So there's a lot of game left to be played, and I would say at this point that the jury has a lot to consider. All of these people have played a pretty good game, and there's still a lot to consider, and there's more to come in terms of how someone's game could be made or broken at this stage.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Session said something in the chat. Ponderosa was peaceful. I wish I was as happy as everybody at Ponderosa during the game. And Kaya agrees with me, hands on a hot idol.
Yes. I feel like this is the majority of fans would agree on that. Jeff Probst.
Hand on a hot
I don't know.
idol.
I mean, Survivor Washington, I just don't think there's the time, but
I did actually pitch hand on a hot idol to Hunter, and he shot it down because of the time constraints. But
yeah.
And I feel like we could just do it and like throw stuff at them to like make it go faster. Like,
can you imagine like Sarah and Kaya in that challenge? Like, it would never end.
It would have been so
like
good.
they're not gonna give up.
I mean, I think
it's
it's
great TV, but there's just not
have to front load the schedule we only did what, 3
Mhm.
challenges, 4 challenges the first day. I think if you
Hmm.
throw a couple extra into there, the swap was overnight, so that wasn't really a big thing. But I think if you speed up the efficiency at which confessionals are taken and things like that, you could definitely do a challenge like that. It just takes time, logistics, and planning and adherence to a schedule.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for next season, because next season should be 18 people. Then again, this season was supposed to be 18 people. So hopefully we can just start earlier on the first day and still finish with roughly the same amount of time. I would love to be able to do hand on hard idle. It just depends if it's like Australian Survivor where they go for like 7 hours, then people are going to be like looking at their watch being like, oh, fucking, can we hurry up? So it depends. I don't actually know what the final challenge for this season is, but it'll be interesting to see it. Yeah, do you guys have anything else to add before we sign off?
Yeah. One question at this point, I think on a nice parting notice, who do you think has the best route to the final two at this point? So we talk about resumes at this point, but getting to that stage, based on the game that they've played at this point, who do you think has either the best or the most, the most routes to the final two?
Connor, because I feel like he definitely has a final two deal with Erica, and he's super close with Kaya. But then, I don't even know if Kaya would take him, but no, probably. And then Sarah, he doesn't have one with Sarah. But then if you look at Sarah's perspective, she doesn't really have a final two deal with anyone. And then in terms of Kaya and Erica, their only final two deal is with Connor. So I feel like Connor's the only one with 2. What about you, Heather?
Yeah, this is the thing with final two, is just you have like this many people who are so dedicated to winning. It's just so hard to say. I mean, part of it too is that I just don't think we've heard much talk about who, like, from contestants in the game itself, like maybe post game, but in the game we haven't heard a lot of talk of, I think I could beat this person, I think I couldn't beat this person. So it's hard to read, because we do have a group this season where it's not really, they're not diehard like loyal people. They're going to do what's in their best interest. And it's hard to say because I don't feel like I have a good read on what people feel is in their best interest. So I really have no idea what's going to happen from a logistical standpoint. But I'm very excited to see how it plays out, because I think we have 4 very deserving, very exciting players. And that's great when you have people who are actually players and they're entertaining too. Because if you're only one of the 2, I'm not a fan. Like if you're good at strategy but you're boring, I'm not a fan. Actually, that's not true, because Keith and Ale is one of my favorites ever. So, but it's nice to have the combination.
No, I'm just in a summary of the season. I'm like over the moon with like how it went, and this last day 3 in particular has just been like so good with everything. Emma, Setu, Lindsay all going out. Yeah, so it's really good. Any last words? I think that's it for me. Nope. Okay. Anyway, we're going to be back on Saturday for the finale. There's going to be a live reunion. Sean, do you know how that's working? You don't know? Yeah, there's going to be some sort of...
Hunter's going to trek through the Orting wilderness on an ATV and some other like amphibious vehicle and present the votes at a pizza parlor. I don't know.
But yeah, so you guys don't even technically know who won, right?
No, they
or well, you may know as a member of production. I don't know if they're told anyone, but
the votes were revealed on site. I can tell you that.
Okay. Yeah. So that was one thing I was wondering about, because I figured everyone wasn't going to be there at the reunion, right?
Not everyone is going to be at the reunion. No, I can tell you that.
Yeah,
I will not be traveling.
That's not. I don't know. The only people I could think of off the top of my head that weren't local were you, Connor, and Corey. Everyone else was relative.
And Lindsay and Brett
are also from California.
Is he having it in California or in Washington?
In Washington.
Is Hunter going to Washington for it?
What I thought. That's where it's hosted.
Yeah, so I'm assuming it's going to be
his own reunion.
Well, yeah, I'm assuming it's going to be like one. I think it's going to be Google Hang Live.
Donald coming in.
Yeah. Oh my God, I want.
She gonna step in and host for Hunter while he's at school?
Yeah, I want her to come in like a motorbike with who from last season can be on the back of her, like Colby was, sing a song.
Hayden, I feel like.
Yeah, Hayden can be on the back. I know. Someone should work on the rap for the finale. Yeah, I'm assuming it's just going to be like one Google hang with the Seattle people and then like you and Lindsay and Connor and all that on like other lines. That's just my guess. I don't know how it's going to work, but people can have that to look forward to. Finale on Saturday. Thank you everybody for watching, and thank you to Sean for filling in
Yes, thanks,
for
Sean.
Brett.
Bye.
All right,
Thanks
bye
for having
guys.
me, gang.
Bye.